I've just gotten done with watching episode 5 of the 1000 Year Blood War arc, and my god, where to begin. This was probably one of my favorite Bleach Mondays out of all the episodes that we've had thus far. So this episode is titled Wrath as a Lightning, and you understand why it is named this as the episode progresses and you actually see the Bankai of Sasakibe activated. But we'll get to that later on in the video. So this episode covers material spanning from chapters 500 to 505, as it adapts a total of 6 chapters worth of material into this most recent episode of the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime. Unlike last week, this episode begins without a recap, which I'm aware that a lot of you had found to be annoying. The anime had just started and they decided to include a recap right at the start of episode 4. It was honestly pretty unnecessary. However, episode 5 is a little different, as we cut straight into the action with the Soul Society's Research and Development Institute informing all of the captains and lieutenants that Ichigo is making his way to the Soul Society, also informing them of a very key piece of information, that his Bankai cannot be stolen. This episode covers a lot of key moments from the Quincy's first invasion of the Soul Society, including the dramatic conclusion to Byakuya's battle against Aznot, Yamamoto finally getting revenge for the death of his beloved lieutenant Sasakibe, Kinpachi confronting Yhwach and Hashwald, and Ichigo being unable to do anything while he is trapped within Kilge's prison, as he hears the screams of the Shinigami and he senses the spiritual pressure of his comrades drop one after the other. And additionally, how can we forget to mention an insightful flashback 2000 years into the past, where we see a young head captain Yamamoto and Sasakibe back when Sasakibe had first learned his Bankai and he had demonstrated it before the head captain. It is revealed during this flashback that Sasakibe had always desired to be Yamamoto's right hand man, and it's for this reason that he had learnt Bankai so that it could be of use to the head captain, thus explaining why over the span of 2000 years he had not used his Bankai once, and the only time that he did activate it was against Driscoll Bursey, who ended up stealing it and had killed Sasakibe immediately after. Now this obviously had occurred right at the start of the arc. If you want my opinion, episode 5 was an emotional rollercoaster of an episode. The first half of the episode had heavily focused on Byakuya's struggle against Aznot, which ends with us assuming that Byakuya has actually been killed, and the second half of the episode is centered around the rage of Yamamoto, mixed in between are scenes of Ichigo's desperate desire to break free and to protect the Soul Society, along with Kinpachi confronting Yhwach. So let's go over the events of this episode and share with you my opinions on it. So after the message is delivered to all of the Soul Society that Ichigo is on his way, Akon notes that Ichigo's spiritual pressure within the Garganta appears to have disappeared. Then Jidombo, who appears to be controlled by the enemy, breaks into the Research and Development Institute as he begins to destroy the facility. Ichigo can do nothing but to hear the Shinigami being killed while he is trapped within the prison. The anime does an excellent job of conveying Ichigo's powerlessness as he hears the explosions and screams of the Shinigami as it cuts to black and white. He even hears Rukia saying that Ichigo will come to protect them. Now this pushes Ichigo to continue striking the walls of Kilge's prison as he tries to find a way out. This cuts to the title card Wrath as a Lightning as the opening begins to play. After the opening song, Kilge reveals that he was given the letter J as his shrift, which stands for the jail, as he is able to create an inescapable prison. Just as he is about to attack Urahara and the others, he ends up being cut in half by a mysterious individual. Now we spend some time with Byakuya, Renji, and Aznot. During this particular part of the episode, I fell in love with Aznot's voice acting, as he delivers this deathly sinister voice, which adds to the fear that Byakuya ends up feeling during this battle. Now of course, Byakuya tells Renji to watch his fight and to identify any weaknesses of Aznot, but Renji doesn't want his captain to be a guinea pig, and he offers to fight the Stenritter himself, but Byakuya is pretty adamant as he states that Renji doesn't have the wisdom to expose all of Aznot's weaknesses and his abilities, for them to learn more about him and to counterattack him. But suddenly, the usually well-composed Byakuya begins to succumb to fear, as his arms and legs begin to freeze. However, Byakuya is enduring against his feelings through his willpower alone. Now this does impress Aznot as he tries to deny it, but it is evident that Byakuya is afraid, and this is made clear and all the more impactful via the anime through this vision of Rukia's disfigured face that he has. It is truly terrifying seeing a fan favorite character like Rukia depicted like this, and I remembered when this panel had actually dropped within the manga and it had shocked quite a lot of fans, and to finally see it animated is truly terrifying. You can see one of her eyeballs hanging out of her eye socket, along with her melting flesh. You can see the top of her skull cap, as Byakuya's fear leads to him thinking of Rukia's decomposing face. That vision of Rukia seals Byakuya's fate, as he is distracted enough to allow Asnot to impale him, and it's here where you can really appreciate the incredible voice acting done by Asnot's voice actor, as he explains to Byakuya just what on earth he is feeling. Of course, within the manga we did see an incredible visual of Byakuya covered by a countless number of flies, which begin crawling up his body. In the anime we get to see a bit more anime exclusive visuals, as we see the flies building up and crawling up his feet all the way up to his head, and it leads up to this incredible visual of him covered in flies, exactly how Asnot had described. This is the frightening depiction of fear without a cause, and fear without any limits. The anime had really broken all limits in order to depict this terrifying scene of the flies crawling up his body. Even here where you see them about to go into his mouth, as then Byakuya yells out in frustration as he's about to attack Asnot. Then we get a very fluid anime exclusive sequence where Byakuya attempts to attack him, but Asnot evades all of his attacks. The anime once again does an excellent job with the visuals of Byakuya's Bankai, but this time with Asnot using it. This makes it all that more impactful when he begins to repeatedly attack Byakuya with his own power. Of course, Byakuya's fallen to his knees, as it's made evident that he is unable to overcome his Bankai with his Shikai alone. The anime does a fantastic job of conveying Byakuya's situation here with the uncensored nature of the visuals. You get to see all of the injuries that he has sustained with the blood all over his captain's coat, and the situation is really looking dire and hopeless for him. Now we do see Rukia react to the drop in spiritual pressure of Byakuya. Now within the manga we don't really get to know who she was facing off against, but the anime does slightly extend this sequence as we find out which Sternritter she was battling here, and through this brief shot of her face we understand that she was fighting the Sternritter Meninas. But because Rukia had turned her back to Meninas, she ends up being cut down. Now I absolutely love this visual here of Byakuya defiantly getting back onto his feet. It's like he is gesturing or proving to Asnot that he isn't afraid of him, because Asnot is so used to his opponents trembling in fear and getting down to their knees, unable to even stand before him. But unfortunately Byakuya stands no chance against his Bankai, as he ends up being repeatedly attacked by it. The anime once again does a flawless job of depicting the Senbonzakura petals, along with the injuries that Byakuya is sustaining here, and how it genuinely looks like he's about to die. The battle between Byakuya and Asnot ends with a bloodied Byakuya beaten and pinned up against a wall, covered in his own blood, as his Zanpakuto shatters and he apologizes to Renji and Rukia, who are laying beaten on the battlefield. We then cut to Hashwat and Yuhabak, and this scene within the manga actually has Hashwat state that Byakuya has died, but this appears to be cut from the anime. Instead, in the anime they are just confronted by Kinpachi without them commenting on the drop in Byakuya's spiritual pressure. Now of course we see Kinpachi carrying the bodies of the three Sternritters over his shoulder, as he explains how he had defeated each of the three of them. Now I had really wanted to see this in the anime, but we finally get it expanded where we get to see how he had defeated each of these Sternritters. Now it is quite brief, but I'm glad that we get to see Kinpachi showcasing some of his abilities and how he was able to defeat the different Quincy, as opposed to one manga panel with some text next to it, which is what we got. Now Kinpachi taking out these Sternritters is admittedly really hilarious to look at, as he explains how he had cut down one of them, or how one of the Quincy just wouldn't stop talking so he ripped out his throat. It was just so fun to see all of this animated. You really get a sense that he was enjoying his time facing off against the Quincy here. We even get to see a brief sequence of his battle against Lloyd. Now I do wish that they showed more of this and how he had defeated his own doppelganger, but other than this, all of these individual sequences with each of these Sternritters were a great addition to this episode. Now of course this is as much as we get to see of Kinpachi's battle against Yuhabak, as it's just him lunging towards him with one singular strike that is blocked. We then cut to Ichigo, who senses the drop in spiritual pressure of Byakuya, Renji and Rukia. This further angers him as he states that he will not let them die and he will protect them. Now this scene in particular has some incredible voice acting by Morita. You can really hear the pain in Ichigo's voice here. And now, as good as Byakuya versus Asnot was, now begins my actual favorite part of this episode, which of course is Yamamoto's revenge against Driscoll Bercy. So we see Shuhei pinned up against a wall as the Sternritter reveals that he becomes stronger after each opponent that that he kills, as he states that he has killed over 100 Shinigami today, and when he was here earlier to inform the head captain of the invasion of the Soul Society, he had killed 100 Shinigami then, including Chojuro Sasakibe. And just as he is about to kill Shuhei with the same javelin that he had used to kill Sasakibe, the head captain arrives onto the battlefield to protect his underling. But Driscoll, who shows no remorse to the head captain, states that he was in fact looking for Yamamoto because he had desired to use his lieutenant's Bankai against him, as the Sternritter activates Sasakibe's Golden Lightning Palace Bankai. Now, upon the activation of this Bankai, we get some very impactful visuals. It is all so ominous and it gives you goosebumps. This combined with the incredible soundtrack and Driscoll taunting the head captain about how he should be thanking him that he is able to see his lieutenant's Bankai again after 2,000 years. As we learn that Sasakibe's Bankai is also one that can manipulate the weather, which is similar to Hitsugaya's Hyorenmaru. Now, just as Yamamoto is hit by his lieutenant's Bankai, I cannot believe that we are seeing a younger version of Yamamoto in anime form, because they have actually animated this flashback. Now, genuinely, we have waited so long to see moments like this being brought to life from the pages of the manga, and this in general is such a big win, seeing this in the anime form. This brief flashback features a young Yamamoto and Sasakibe, as we learn that Sasakibe had visited the head captain day after day, and he had referred to the head captain as Ijisai because of the shape of the scar on his forehead. Sasakibe had continued to meet the head captain because he had desired to be his right-hand man. This was because of how much he had respected and admired Yamamoto. He reveals to him that he has learned Bankai just as Yamamoto had instructed him to do so. He then tells Sasakibe to try and take him down with this Bankai. I lost my shit when I'd seen this anime exclusive scene of Sasakibe activating his Bankai, because in the manga this was all done off screen, but in the anime you actually get to see Sasakibe charge up this attack and fire it at Yamamoto. Now, this makes it all that more impactful when Yamamoto recalls how brilliant Sasakibe's Bankai was when he had first seen it. This flashback also reveals that Yamamoto had that second scar on his forehead because of Sasakibe's Bankai. We learned that this Bankai was only acquired in order to be of service to Yamamoto, and after the second scar had healed up on the head of Yamamoto, it had resembled the Japanese character for Ju, which had then led to other people referring to Yamamoto as Jujisai. However, Sasakibe had continued to refer to him as Ijisai, as he had felt that his name should not be changed just because of the new scar that he had given him, and it was for the sake of Sasakibe that Yamamoto had actually taken up the name Genryusai. In general, this was an incredible and very impactful recollection of events that makes us appreciate the emotions that Yamamoto must be feeling right now as he faces off against a poor imitation of his lieutenant's Bankai, the very Bankai that Sasakibe had honed and made stronger through decades of training, one that was acquired for the sake of Yamamoto. A furious Yamamoto swiftly kills the Sternritter as he burns him all the way down to his bones, disintegrating them. Now, there is intensive music here where Yamamoto begins his attack against Driscoll. After he is defeated, Yamamoto reassures Shuhei Hisagi that he intends to kill every one of the intruders. Burning with rage, he rushes off to confront Yhwach as all of the captains across the Serite can feel the burning fury of Yamamoto's spiritual pressure. Each of them now feel inspired to give it their all against the different Sternritters they are fighting. Komamura states that the Shinigami cannot be caught laying on the ground while the head captain is up on his feet, and the episode concludes with Shunsui commenting on how Yamamoto's spiritual pressure resonating across the Serite is giving him goosebumps. It is like he is being told off for struggling against Robert. Now, with Shunsui charging towards the Sternritter, the episode concludes, but make sure you stick around until after the end credits because there is a post-credit scene here, with the final pages of chapter 505 being adapted into this post-credit scene where we see Yhwach holding up a beaten Kenpachi by his neck. He is disappointed that one of the 5 great war powers has turned out to be so weak, but just as he declares that the Soul Society is finished, Yamamoto arrives onto the battlefield as he states that it's been over 1,000 years since they had last met, and he declares that he has come to take his life. What an impactful way to end this incredible episode, as episode 6 promises to adapt one of the key battles of this arc, Yamamoto versus Yhwach. Everything that has happened in this episode, it is so hard not to be excited, with Byakuya's defeat, with Ichigo trapped, with the flashback of Sasakibe, and now Yamamoto confronting Yhwach. There's so much that I love about this anime adaptation of Bleach's final arc, and I'm so glad that we got to see some anime exclusive scenes of them making the fear that Byakuya was feeling that much more impactful by doing justice to scenes like Rukia's face being disfigured or where the flies were crawling up his body. It all looked truly terrifying. And in addition to this, we got to see some anime exclusive moments via Kimpachi explaining how he had defeated the 3 Sternritters. And then my favorite anime exclusive scene in this episode was Sasakibe activating his Bankai. Now there's a lot to dive into when it comes to an anime versus manga comparison, as there were some scenes that were cut in this episode, but of course, like always, you'll see this in my anime versus manga video, which I'll drop tomorrow. I want to know all of your thoughts. What did you think about Bleach episode 5, Wrath as a Lightning? Did you love it as much as I did, or did you have a couple of issues with it? Definitely continue the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thank you for sticking around to the end of this episode, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach 1000 Year Blood War arc anime video.